Hello everyone, and welcome to the 30th episode of the Anoka-Hennepin Podcast Network 2009-2010 school year. The award-winning Anoka-Hennepin Podcast Network reports on the latest news and events from around the district and periodical podcasts. This is Courtney Markison, welcoming Sarah Schwartz back to the helm. In today's Around Our Schools episode, we'll take a look at how students at Coon Rapids High School recently learned about the dangers of drinking and driving.
Thanks, Courtney. The goal of the Around Our Schools feature is to bring our listeners quick summaries of the latest news from district schools. In our previous Around Our Schools episode, we looked at a cultural exchange visit at Johnsville Elementary School.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. In today's episode, we'll show how a mock crash event at Coon Rapids High School alerted students and community members to the dangers of drinking and driving. This episode features video footage from the event, as well as commentary from special guest Jeff McGonigal, principal of Coon Rapids High School.
Just a reminder for our listeners that our podcast episodes are enhanced with chapter markers for iTunes subscribers, so you can move between or skip episode chapters with ease while viewing in iTunes or on an iPod.
In this episode, you can view the chapter list under the Chapters heading when viewing in iTunes, or look for the open book or bulleted list icon, which is located next to the playback controls, when you're viewing the video in the iTunes window, a separate window, or at full screen.
iPod users can use the click wheel on their iPods or the touch screen on their iPod Touch or iPhones to jump back and forth between chapters.
And now for the Around Our Schools feature about Coon Rapids High School's mock car crash event.
The piercing sound of sirens filled the air as emergency response vehicles raced to the scene of a mock crash at Coon Rapids High School the morning of April 15th, involving 2 cars and 1 driver under the influence of alcohol. 1 student was pronounced dead by the coroner. Another was arrested for drunk driving, while others sustained injuries. Coon Rapids students and staff intently watched as the deceased student victim was zipped up in a body bag and another freed from the wreckage with the Jaws of Life tool and then taken away in a helicopter.
The crash itself was just a simulation, but the seriousness of its message was incredibly real for Coon Rapids students and staff. The event was held 2 days before the school's prom and was designed to alert students and community members to the seriousness and consequences of drinking and driving, promote seatbelt use, and to recognize the work of emergency medical personnel.
The Coon Rapids High School Student Council and Liberty Mutual Insurance Group sponsored the event, which featured Coon Rapids theater students playing the roles of student drivers and passengers and emergency medical personnel from the Coon Rapids Police and Fire Departments, North Memorial Hospital, Minnesota State Patrol, and Anoka County Coroner's Office, acting out their real-life duties.
Cornelius Risch, a former teacher at Coon Rapids High School and a volunteer speaker for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, known as MAD, described how his life was impacted following the death of his father by a drunk driver 35 years ago.
Coon Rapids High School principal Jeff McGonigal said that the event definitely got students, staff, and even community members' attention. Here's what he had to say on how the event came about.
Well, we were contacted by a representative from Liberty Mutual Insurance, and it happened to be at a time when we were thinking about an event like this because we're concerned about student safety following prom and leading up to graduation. There have been some accidents in Coon Rapids area in the past and the larger area in the school district. I'm not aware of any that were fatal, but as we were working on this project, the tragedy in Cambridge took place where 4 students were killed, and it seemed very timely then, and we were fortunate that we had taken steps to proceed.
Jeff, what did you hope students would learn from this event?
Well, we know that teens haven't fully developed their sense of risk, and we know that in a lot of statistics that borne out in accidents and high-risk behavior. We also know that if students are personally exposed to something like what we put together, that impacts them in a much more significant way than reading about it in a book or in the newspaper. And that was our goal, was to give the same message they've heard before in driver's education and from their parents, but do it in a way that it really had an impact on them, so it would change behavior and allowing them to be more safe.
What kind of reaction did students have toward the event?
I think I started to gauge the reaction while it was going on. There are a lot of times when you host an event and somebody's probably talking and somebody else is sending a signal across the audience to a friend, and maybe even people making light of some element of the event. None of that took place. There was complete attention to the event as it took place by the students. I was amazed and impressed by the student behavior and attention they were given to the event. I mean, in one regard, the fact that it was on such a large scale, kind of demanded attention when you have a jet engine helicopter landing, for example, but it was beyond what I think you would even expect. And so then after the event, I think most all the conversation throughout the school was the students who were there telling the students who weren't all about it. And that's what we wanted to have happen. That was exactly our goal.
Parents and community members were also supportive of the event, according to McGonigal.
As I was going around the community, I remember, for example, being at a Rotary Club meeting where one of the city council members said that it was a big discussion at City Hall about how appropriate this was and the timing, and in light of the recent accidents that occurred around the state, that they were pretty impressed by what was undertaken and pleased to have been a part of it. I felt really good coming away from it at how attentive our students were and how much they seemed to be internalizing it. There's a difference between checking off what's a good decision on a test and living that good decision. And I felt like our students were coming away with a much deeper understanding of how they should operate personally to protect themselves and their friends and loved ones. It was also neat to have so many agencies working together to send that message too. When you see all that cooperation going together for something like that, it makes you feel pretty good.
Well, Courtney, it's great to hear that the event affected students, staff, and community members in a positive way. The time between prom in the spring and Labor Day weekend are the 100 most dangerous days for teen drivers, so this episode is a good reminder for teens and adults to make more responsible decisions when it comes to driving.
So true, Sarah. For other teen traffic safety news, be sure to check out our Around Our Schools episode about the award-winning work on teen traffic safety by Anoka High School's Students Against Destructive Decisions team in episode 23. Just click on the window that's showing in your iTunes screen right now, or visit www.anoka.k12.mn.us/AHPodcast and click on episode 23 of the 2009-2010 school year folder. This concludes today's Around Our Schools podcast episode featuring Coon Rapids High School. This is Courtney Markison
And Sarah Schwartz.
signing off for the Anoka-Hennepin Podcast Network.